Greetings Earthlings, Joel at Earth Tools here. We're going to shoot a video today on how to adjust the throttle lever tension on a walk-behind tractor. So I've got here a BCS, a Grillo G107, and also a Grillo G110. I chose these three tractors because this represents the three different kind of throttle levers that you'll typically find on walk-behind tractors. Start with the BCS. So you can come on in, Michaela. Michaela is filming today. Thanks, Michaela. So here's the throttle lever. The way these throttle systems work is you've got a spring down on the engine that is always trying to pull the throttle lever on the engine back to idle. When the throttle cable pulls against, when I advance this lever up, I'm pulling the cable through the sheath and pulling the lever down on the engine to the accelerated position to make the engine go faster. What holds it in position is the drag that is inherent in this throttle lever assembly. If this thing wasn't hard to move, it wouldn't stay up. It would just, the vibrations of the engine would just vibrate it right back down. It would go back down to idle because the spring on the engine is always trying to pull it to idle. This has to have enough drag to overcome the spring. So what'll happen occasionally is somebody will call and say, hey, I've got my BCS, I put it up and in 5 minutes it's just vibrated back down. What's going on? And BCS would say, well, you just put a new throttle lever assembly on it. Well, that's all fine and well, but that's 25 bucks. So the thing is, and I'm going to step into the view of the camera, you can back up around here. There is a slotted screw right here that controls the drag. Now, that loosened pretty easily. That actually wasn't fully tight, and we see that problem on BCS a lot. I have to tighten this screw on every new tractor we sell because some of them are not tight from the factory. So that screw should be fully tight, just as tight as you can get it. Now, sometimes after the tractor's been in service for multiple years, that may not be enough. You may tighten that spring or that screw fully, and the thing still doesn't have adequate tension to hold itself in place. Well, you can still work on it. BCS does not sell parts for this throttle lever assembly as separate parts, but it does come apart. There's a screw here. You can see that the hole in the center is actually slightly squared off, and there is a tension washer. It is a wavy washer. It's a washer made of spring steel, and it has a little bend to it. You can buy this washer. We have them in stock. We call it a 12 millimeter wavy washer. You can also resuscitate the thing because sometimes they'll just, after years of service, they'll just get flattened out. They don't have any spring left. Well, you can take it out, put the bottom end of it on a vise, hit the top end with a hammer to put some more bend in it, and put it back in there, and it'll increase the tension. Now, it's not going to last very long that way. You might get another year or two out of it, but the thing is, once that spring steel has kind of lost its temper, it's not going to hold its shape forever. But anyway, you put this back together, and you know, with the nice wavy washer with the proper amount of wave in it, and you just have to make sure that the squared off parts go where they're supposed to. There's little squared shoulders on this thing, and if you don't put it in there right, if you put it in there cockeyed, it's not going to work because, number one, the reason these are squared off is so that when the bolt is tight in the middle, this cap cannot turn. It is locked in position. If it's not locked down where it needs to be, then as you move the lever up and down, the whole thing will turn and it won't have any tension. So it's got to be in there properly. Let's get this centered in here. Okay. Usually you can just feel where those notches are. Yeah, get that right in. Okay, that's working like it should. All right, done with the screwdriver. We don't need that for the others. So here's the Grillo G107 throttle adjustment. This is the type of adjustment you have on most of the Grillo tractors, the 85, 85D, 107, G52, and even the G131. So the way this thing works is, again, you've got tension. You know, this one's backwards in that you push it down to accelerate, but it doesn't matter. It does the same thing, still moving the cable. With this one, you've got a bolt that goes all the way through it. Most of these have an Allen head on them. I've seen a few old ones with slotted heads on them, but this has a 4 millimeter Allen wrench. So by tightening this bolt, it crushes the whole throttle lever assembly together and increases the tension internally. But you have to loosen this nut, which is on the other end of the bolt. That bolt passes right through the handlebar and comes out the other end. If I don't loosen this nut first, I'm not going to be able to move the bolt. So I loosen this up a little bit. It's kind of the jam nut that holds the bolt in place. I increase the tension on this to where I want it. Actually, it was pretty good to begin with, but I'll give it a little more here, just for the sake of the video. Okay, now I'll hold this so it doesn't loosen up and go ahead and tighten this back down. You can also shoot some lube down in these. You'll notice the BCS one had some grease in it. These should also have some lube kind of shot down in there just to keep them from squeaking and being nasty. Okay, that's great. Get the proper amount of tension there. Now on the G110, this one's a little more interesting. I'm going to grab a couple tools here. This one couldn't carry all the tools in my hand. This one has a pivot point down under this green hood, and the pivot point is just a bolt and a lock nut. Both the nut and the bolt have 13mm heads, which are very common on these machines. To get to this, really, you should take this green shroud off, which is a bit of a pain because you have to remove both these bolts. You have to remove this bolt to take this handle off so that this whole thing can come off of here. But I've discovered that you can, if you advance it all the way up to maximum, you can sneak a wrench down in here and feel around and find that bolt. See, I'm on it right now. And then you can put this down in this other slot, and you can find the other nut, and you can tension it up by drawing it down a little bit. This one was actually tight enough, so I'm not going to increase the tension at all. It's nice and stiff. But I've seen some of these that loosen up over time, and again, if you push it up to maximum, it'll just vibrate its way back down. So you can stick some wrenches down in there, 13mm wrenches, and just tighten that down. If you have trouble finding it that way, well, you can always take this cover off. So that's it. Thanks for watching.